Welcome to Enter the Quote. My name's George.
My name's Oscar. Yeah, this week we talk about impact and we talk about what it means to have effective impact in our life and the sort of pressures we might be under based on the sort of culture that we have around how to have impact. So it's a lot about impact this week. It was it's quite liberating actually. Some of the stuff that we went over, it feels like I feel more relaxed in the knowledge of what we've been talking about. So yeah, that's definitely something I've come away with.
Yeah, I think I've found this whole idea around this quote of just focusing on the things that are on your control and not feeling guilty for all the stuff that's outside of your control. And it's a very simple but powerful idea, and it's something that has definitely had a positive influence on my life. So I hope you enjoy this episode as well. Let's get into it. So the quote I've chosen for this week is from Jack Cornfield, and it is, "Tend to the part of the garden you can touch." So this quote, I guess for me, really is about focusing on the things that are in your control. And this quote has had, or this kind of way of thinking has really had a big positive impact on my life and how I live my life. Just focusing on really the things that I can change in my life, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all of these things, for example, climate change, which is, arguably one of the biggest things facing humans at the moment, one of the biggest sort of dangers. And there's things like that where I kind of feel guilty that I'm not like actively doing something on that, or all sorts of other, social issues, or there's just all sorts of crazy stuff going on around the world. And I can feel like, I should be doing something about all of these different things. And really, I think what this quote has helped me do is just actually think about what I can change, like what is within my control. Because it doesn't help to be just feeling guilty about all these things that are going wrong in the world. And I think a lot of people can get into that. And I've definitely have slipped into that as well, of like, you feel like if there's bad things going on, you should know about them and you should kind of feel bad and have empathy for those people. The only problem is, like, if you're doing that and you're not actually helping any people, you're just feeling bad about them, then you might end up neglecting the actual people who are around you. Like you're thinking about all these horrible things and what's going wrong with the world, and really empathizing with all these people. But I found that when I get too focused on that, I'm not as good a person to just the people around me. So I end up neglecting my actual life, like the actual place where I can really make a real difference, and kind of neglecting that by not just being very present with my friends and family, and just being a good person in my daily life. So it's been a big change in how I think about things, in just really focusing on what can I control and how can I be, a good person in my immediate world, and choose things that I can move the needle on, choose things that I can really make better.
Yeah, the sense I got from what you just said in a way is there can be an idea that guilt is a form of action, or that being informed is a form of action. And I guess it is a controversial opinion, but thinking that being informed or thinking that feeling guilty is actually doing something other than making yourself feel bad, potentially making those around you feel bad. Seeing that it is believing that it is some sort of form of action, that you're doing a good duty by simply knowing about terrible things that are happening, like that. I think it's an interesting one to question, to look at. I don't have a complete answer. Like I definitely wouldn't want to go as far to say it's useless, or like that, reading the news about events that are happening on the other side of the world is useless. But I think that it is it's interesting to explore. Like, so what use does it have if I'm not going to be taking action on it? Like, what use does it have? Does it have use to those people that I'm reading about, or does that have use to myself? Does it actually encourage action of any kind? And I think that is an interesting one, because I do think that there is a kind of cultural narrative that being informed is a form of action in itself.
Well, I think it is good to get the overview, like to really, and especially as you know, when you're, well, I mean, stages throughout your life, but I think especially when you're younger, it's good to really understand and get an idea of what things are going on in the world, what is happening. And you can start to find out, you know, what are the causes that you really care about and are drawn to. And that can really inform your life. You know, say with something like climate change, you would, you know, start to learn things about, okay, how can you do, you know, a part of say, reducing your carbon emissions or something like that. So you're becoming informed of these different things. You might, you know, find something out about how, you know, plastic is disposed of or something like that. And you can, you know, get these overviews of how you can change a few of your daily habits that might actually have, you know, an incremental impact on some of these larger events. But I think really the problem can be just the compulsive consumption of this, like really feeling like you need to know all of this stuff all the time. And you know, even if there's some utility to it, you've got to think about the opportunity cost of spending all your time doing that. You know, maybe there is, you know, there are some uses, because you will find out bits of information. Maybe there is something that you can do to help, or some little way you could change your life and the things that you do that might help this particular cause. But really thinking about the opportunity cost of like, my hours of my day, how can I, you know, have the most positive impact on the world through this day? You know, it might be that just the most positive impact you can have right now is like going to work and being like positive at work, or, you know, just being kind to the people there, and maybe, you know, reaching out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or I don't know, someone who you know is self-isolating at the moment, and just seeing how they are, you know, really think like, what are the things that I can actually change in my surroundings?
You've talked about the contrast between living in a way that is consumed by the information you're receiving about the world, for example, or the general like sense of your entire life, like this kind of concept of something much bigger than your immediate surroundings. The contrast between that and what you've talked about is when you can come back down to earth and actually relate one-on-one with the people around you and be kind to them more directly, have a more direct impact. So moving from this more abstract impact to something a bit more direct. And I was just wondering about if you could talk about the difference that you found if you've maybe spent time in that more abstracted place, and the time in the more kind of localized direct place, and the sort of difference that you found in your life.
Yeah, well, I'd say definitely focusing on the stuff around me has made me feel a lot more empowered, because you're really feeling like, oh, I'm changing things. Like, oh, you know, even if they're seemingly small things, or just, you know, things to do with your own personal relationships, but you can actually see that you're making a difference. And that's just rewarding to really feel that. Whereas, you know, if you're focusing on all these things that you're not making a difference on, you know, that can be really, you know, all these things that are going wrong that you don't feel like you can actively change. And, you know, all the things that you're doing in your life don't seem to be reflected in the news. You know, you're doing all these, you know, maybe you are even trying to help with these things, and maybe you don't see it reflected there. But yeah, just focusing on, you know, the people around me, I've found that I've just felt a lot better, really. I guess the main areas that I've chosen to focus on now is, you know, friends, family, my jiu-jitsu club, my work, and also this podcast as well. I kind of see this podcast as a way to reach more people and hopefully share some ideas and things that have been helpful to me, and hopefully that can kind of help other people. So I see that as something that I hope that I can contribute to the world on. obviously now, you know, it's still on a very small scale, but that's something that will have a larger impact, hopefully. But you don't need to have that. There's nothing wrong with just spending your life just like being kind to people around you as much as you can and enjoying your life. You're not a bad person for doing that. You know, it's something, you know, people take on responsibility for making things in the world better. And, you know, some people are in a position where they don't really feel like they're able to do that. And some people are in a position where, you know, they feel like they need to do it. Like they feel like they couldn't not do it. But yeah, I think it's definitely helped me to feel like, I think in my actions, I'm actually probably making the world a better place than I was before. But I'm not feeling like I'm obligated to, like I'm a bad person if I'm not doing all these different things. And I think that's really liberating to just think I'm not responsible for all these things that are outside of my control. I can take responsibility for some things that I want to change in my immediate life. And, you know, say this podcast is kind of taking responsibility for something that I want to, you know, it's kind of like boosting ideas that I think are valuable, basically, and sharing my personal experience, you know, in the hopes that other people will resonate with it. And it's not like there's so many other people with brilliant content that they're putting out, but it's more just I know that I resonate with certain people and don't with others. And often the content can be very similar, but there's some people who you just kind of resonate with. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some people who, for whatever bizarre reason, resonate with me rather than other people, and that I can kind of help share some cool ideas with them and provide, you know, a cool space for them to think about new things. But again, that's not required. You don't need to do that. You can just like be, you know, just do your best to be a good person and enjoy your life.
So just before we get back to the episode, if you fancy it, if you could share this episode or this podcast with someone that you like very much, that would be most excellent. That's the way that we grow. And yeah, that would be absolutely lovely if you could just hit that share button, put it on Instagram, send it to a friend. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Yeah, you touched on a really good point that I do feel like we're in an age where there's a lot of pressure in lots of forms. But, you know, like talking about this form specifically of changing the world, it's almost like we've been given all this information, this data, access to information about every single happening that's happening in the world. Like just we have access to exactly what's going on everywhere and all the horrific things that are happening. And I think that there's more pressure than ever to change the world, to fix the world, you know, like to be personally responsible, to take the world on your shoulders and think until everything is fixed, until there is no more suffering, it's my responsibility to fix the world, you know. And I think other manifestations of this are like, it, you know, in kind of career prospects as well. It's like the world's your oyster, like reach for the stars. On one level, it's like, oh, the world's limitless, you know, you can do whatever you want. And on another level, I think the more dominant narrative is like, unless you do something fucking epic, unless you impact thousands of people's lives, millions of people's lives, you know, then you're a failure, basically. Like the more ordinary way of living, the more ordinary way of being, of just, yeah, as you say, like having impact on your immediate surroundings. I would kind of say, I'd maybe go as far to say it's like qualitative impact over quantitative impact, you know, like actually making sure that the contacts you are having with people and the actions you are taking are of high quality. It doesn't mean that quantitatively, it doesn't mean that you're reaching thousands or millions of people with what you're doing, but that what you are doing is of high quality. Like when you meet people, you deeply listen. When you offer your help, you do it wholeheartedly. Like these are things of high quality. But I don't know, my sense of it is like, actually, there's much more of a focus on kind of quantitative at the moment. It's like, oh, you know, everything's opened up with the internet, and therefore you have to be impacting like so many people with what you're doing. And it's like, actually, no, not really. Obviously, you don't want to be hurting a lot of people with what you're doing. But I wonder, this is probably the only time in history, the first time in history, where people are expected to have that much influence and impact to that many people. And that there's actually a pressure to do that, to fix everything, to know about everything, to impact all these people, to progress in your career and like reach your dreams and your aspirations and all of these things. And it's like, that's an incredible amount of pressure. It's not okay anymore to just live an ordinary life and for there to be kindness. You know, that's not enough, apparently. That feels like the kind of cultural narrative or the narrative that exists online and stuff. So
yeah, no, that's a great distinction. And that is really where life happens. Life happens in the interactions between you and your direct environment. That is what influences everything. That's where the events, you know, that's what leads to social change or anything. It's literally, that's where it happens. It's in your physical interaction with your environment. And it's easy to get caught up often in other stuff, but really it is about just being, you know, like if everyone was just like a good person within their direct environment, then everything would be fine.
Very good.
You know,
all sorted.
Yeah, there we go. That's everyone just be like cool to each other and it will be all right. But as you were talking, it actually made me think about the quote in a slightly different way of tending to the part of the garden you can touch, as well as just being, you know, physically the things that are under your control, but really thinking about like, what are your skills? People have, you know, and this can sound bad, and it's crazy that this should sound bad, but like some people are just not capable of certain things. Some people are just gonna suck in a certain career or doing a certain thing. You know, some people are you're just not good at that. Some people just can't do certain things. That's it. Like there's no amount of kind of wishing that can make you do those things. And I think it can actually be quite harmful to really believe that you can literally do anything. It's just like very naive. And you're much better off to actually think, no, what am I actually good at? Like what do I enjoy doing and what can I do well? And focusing on that, because it's such a shame to be focusing on something that you're just not the best at, and you're just, you know, there's going to be other people who are just naturally a lot better at that thing, and there might be some talents that you're really neglecting, and that's your gift that you can give to the world, you know, your own unique talents. And it's such a shame to neglect those just because you feel like, you know, oh no, I should be able to do this, or I'd like to be this sort of person. I'd like to be the sort of person who you know, who does this, who like, I don't know, travels around the world and does these crazy things, or the sort of person who runs a business or is like a super successful athlete or something like that. And it's kind of just not knowing yourself to pursue those things when that's really just not what you're best for.
Well, that seems like a good place to move on to next week's quote. What do you reckon?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
What you got?
This is a quote by Sam Altman. If you can't figure out what kind of work you like, pay attention to what's easy to concentrate on and gives you energy, versus what makes you tune out and feel tired. Yeah, I'm leading workshops at the moment, so this feels very current for me, of just like, what sort of direction am I kind of helping lead people in, you know? And I do think a lot of it is about like what gives us energy. So I'm interested in exploring that together.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your week.